I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about bioidentical hormones. We're going to talk about bioidenticals versus synthetic hormones. We're going to talk about the mistakes that we see that are regularly made with bioidenticals and talking about the functional approach with bioidentical hormones, especially if you have POI or DOR or low AMH and you've been told to supplement with DHEA without testing. So we're talking about why testing is important and really taking a very individual approach with bioidentical hormones and not just treating the hormones, but looking at the whole body, which is the foundation of the functional approach. So excited for you to listen, and thanks for being here. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. Hey there. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers. And really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FABfertile.com and click on book a free call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FABfertile.com and click on book a free call. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our FabFertile couples coaching program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is the exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. So I got to say I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today I'm welcoming Justine Altman back to the podcast, and we're digging into bioidentical hormones and when, if you need to use them during the fertility journey. So definitely check out episode number 6 for a functional medicine 101 talk, plus a look at some of the tools we use to help couples conceive. And Justine is part of my team here at Fertile. She's an integral part of our couples coaching program, which uses functional lab testing, diet, and lifestyle changes to dramatically improve conception. So if you're struggling with infertility, your body is desperately trying to tell you something, and focusing on your health will either help you get pregnant naturally, or if you do need to go to the fertility clinic, it will improve your chances of success. And Justine is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. She was diagnosed with PCOS and struggled with infertility. She had her first baby with fertility treatments, but after taking a functional approach, she was able to conceive her second child naturally. So thanks so much for listening. I'm truly thankful that you are here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Justine, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So today we're digging into bioidenticals. So before we go into this, just wanted to do our disclaimer. So be sure to refer to our disclaimer at the end of the show, but we are not doctors. Please consult with your physician before making any of these changes. Our goal is to educate you to make sure you're empowered to know that there are many changes you can make before you go to the clinic. So there's a lot of questions we have on bioidentical hormones, and the conventional side approach. If something is low, it's sort of treating the numbers, like if the progesterone is low or the estrogen's high, or it's treating the numbers with a hormone. And the conventional side of things, that's just not how we do it. We're looking at the whole body, and it's very individualized approach. So for bioidentical hormone, let's talk about the difference between synthetic versus bioidentical, because I remember back in the day, I think we all remember the Suzanne Summers thing, and there's the synthetic ones with horse urine. And then there was we'll go into some of the controversy with it, but I think they've got a bad rap. So let's talk about synthetic versus bioidentical.
Yeah. So synthetic hormones, they're just not the same as bioidentical. So bioidentical they're still produced in a lab, right? But they're made from natural ingredients. So typically yams or soy, and they're produced to be completely identical in every possible way to human hormones. Whereas the synthetic hormones, they're similar in chemical structure, but they're different enough that the body just doesn't react to them in the same way. And it doesn't necessarily target the same tissues. And so ultimately, it can raise hormones for people. The synthetically produced hormones can raise hormones for people who have low hormone, but it does all sorts of other things as well. There are tons of side effects that just don't exist with bioidentical hormones. So they're really not apples to apples. The synthetic hormones and the bioidentical hormones, they're really completely different. Whereas the bioidentical hormones are really just sort of supporting the body's natural hormone production. Synthetic hormones are they're like taking control. They're sort of going, we run the show here now. And there are all sorts of side effects that we know are problematic for people.
Yeah. And then with the question here of, why pharmaceutical companies wouldn't have just produced all bioidentical hormones to begin with. There's a lot of interpretation with that, but basically being that synthetic prescriptions are not patentable. So that may be the underlying reason. Do you have some thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So essentially it's the same as you, right? So it's, ultimately when you have a question about why something isn't one way or another, follow the money. And, they've got to, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, they have to have a way to make it completely exact, to make the dosing perfect. And that's why it's the same thing with things like thyroid medication, right? So doctors in general often aren't fans of desiccated thyroid, of actual like thyroid gland for people to take, because they can't get the dosing completely exact, right? They don't know that it's exactly 20.0 milligrams of whatever. Whereas they can do that with the pharmaceuticals. And I think, so it's a matter of just sort of controlling the dosage, when in reality, that's the main focus should be more about how is a person responding and is it actually serving their body, rather than, knowing an exact right dosage for a person based on a weight. There's
Different ways of administering the hormones, the bioidentical hormones. So there's oral and transdermal. Can you talk about the two different types and what that, and I guess the benefits of each or cons of some?
Yeah, so there's actually a handful of different options. The bioidenticals that I typically work with are liquid. So they come in a little dark glass bottle, as anything with oil should, to make sure that the oil is protected from light and from heat and things like that. So bioidenticals come in a number of options, and often they come as a liquid, and they can be applied topically to the skin, or they can be taken orally. And in a lot of cases, we recommend them sublingually. So it means you put them in your mouth. You put a few drops in your mouth, and you hold it under your tongue for about a minute, and it allows the majority of the hormone to actually be absorbed through the tissue in the mouth, and then you swallow the rest of it basically to get the rest of the hormone. And then I know there are other doctors out there. I have colleagues who recommend it vaginally, even. So basically just to apply it to the tissue inside of the vagina or around the vagina, and then it's absorbed really well there as well. And sometimes even has additional benefits to be dosed that way. And then of course there are creams that go on the skin as well, although those are not my preference in general, because the creams tend to sort of pool in the tissue that it's applied to, and can also get on other people, especially partners. And so there certainly have been cases where when people have used a cream where the partner's hormones have increased. And of course, that's not the intent there.
Yeah. And then, so let's just go with the controversy around with hormone replacement therapy and an increased risk of cancer. So synthetic progestin has been, or otherwise known as Provera, has been linked to an increased risk of stroke, heart disease, and breast cancer. And bioidentical progesterone has not shown these risks. And then also, so I'm just going to read some here. So many studies have confirmed that the safety and effectiveness of bioidentical hormones. One example is a large French study, Fournier, which looked at breast cancer risk in over 80,000 women. And the study's conclusion was that micronized progesterone compared to synthetic progestin treatment was associated with significantly lower breast cancer risks. Much of this can be found in the comprehensive 2009 summary review of published studies. And the review concluded that the recommendation that bioidentical hormones remain the preferred method of HRT. And there's many other reviews as well. So that was taken from actually off of Dr. Anna Kabeka's site, which we interview her on the podcast here as well. Anything you wanted to say there, Justine?
Yeah. So just sort of reconfirming what the study says, which is what I've heard over the years too, is that essentially that the bioidenticals, that there are, as far as we know, no side effects whatsoever. Whereas we know there's a huge laundry list of side effects when it comes to the synthetic hormones, things like increased appetite and weight gain and fluid retention and irritability, depression, headache, the list goes on, acne, nausea, hair loss, insomnia, decreased sexual interest, breast tenderness. Of course, the worst ones, right? The cancer. Those are things that we know can be linked to synthetic hormones. We don't see any of that with the bioidentical hormones. We actually, like you said, we see lower risks of breast cancer. And we see all sorts of other wonderful, not side effects, but wonderful benefits, right? So estrogen balances, sleep improves, it has a natural calming effect. It helps balance fluid in the cells. It's anti-inflammatory. It's a natural antidepressant. It improves libido. So sort of all of these benefits. And so really the synthetic versus the bioidentical are really night and day.
Right. Okay. And then as far as this whole podcast, we Get Pregnant Naturally, we talk a lot about hormones and really that functional approach where we're looking at reducing the physical stressors, be it a gut infection, a food sensitivity, the environmental toxins that we're all exposed to, the xenoestrogens, the plastics, our toxic products that we're exposed to. Also, poor sleep can impact hormones, blood sugar balance. Anything else you wanted to say on that? Because I think a lot of times in the conventional side of things, we're attacking the hormone. We're looking at that low AMH. We're looking at the high FSH. We're looking at our hormones using blood, and we're looking at them using urine, and we just focus myopically on them, where there's all these other things of why are they off to start with.
Yeah. So that focusing on the hormones is exactly the opposite of what we do. So we are trying to help the body function naturally, do the things that it's supposed to do. Right. And so the body is supposed to be producing its own hormones, and all of those hormones are controlling sort of all of the things that are supposed to be happening in the body. And what we find is that if we take stress off of the body, and I use stress really loosely to mean, any kind of stress. So stress from foods that are not good for us, stress from, day-to-day life stress from toxins that we come into contact with, stress from structural, misalignment. If you need a chiropractic adjustment, stress from anything, essentially. When we take stress off of the body just starts to do what it's supposed to do at optimum level, at 100%. What we do is we focus on reducing stress in every way possible. And so adding some bioidentical hormones is a way that we can sort of help that process. It really sort of gives the hormones as they are currently a bit of a boost, but essentially the sort of the main focus of what really gets the body working again, what really gets the reproductive system working again, and the ability to make babies happen again is to reduce stress on the body in every way that we can. Our approach is that we focus on nutrition, and we focus on healthy lifestyle habits like sleep and exercise, and reducing stress in every way that we can. And the bioidenticals simply are just one sort of part of the program, basically. They're an enhancer, essentially, of the program.
Yeah, and they're used on a very individual basis. So it's not just a thing where that's the where we'd go for everyone, but it's very individual.
Exactly. Yeah. So we never ever recommend a hormone without doing some testing. So we do the testing. We find out if hormones are low and if it's warranted given, given what that person is presenting with, right? What is that person's story, and do hormones actually make sense for that person? And do the test results actually indicate that there's a deficiency? And if there is, then we recommend bioidentical hormones. And of course, we continue to do testing periodically to make sure that the hormone isn't getting too high, right? And that's something that happens quite a lot with synthetic hormones. I've certainly seen cases where we've run a hormone test and we see that their levels are something like 1,000 times what they're supposed to be. And it's because the synthetic hormones are just that powerful, and it can end up building up in a person's body. And ultimately we end up with, not the same problem we had before, but just a different problem. And that's not what we want in functional nutrition, right? We really want for everything to sort of be in the sweet spot at this optimal level, and we don't want to overshoot our target. And so that's why we do testing periodically, in order to make sure that we're doing things in a careful, cautious, bio-individual way, right? That it really matches exactly where the person is right now.
And so what are the hormones that we're regularly using?
Yeah. So primarily it's progesterone and DHEA. We tend to find that a lot of times when there are fertility issues, that it's a situation where progesterone is a bit low, and other times when progesterone is not necessarily low, but estrogen is a bit high. So progesterone is sort of the biggest one. DHEA is another one that ends up low for a lot of people for various reasons. And it's sort of a master hormone. So it can sort of be used, the body can use DHEA to on its own synthesize other hormones, other sex hormones. And then occasionally there's a need for estrogen or testosterone. Those are far more rare, though. It tends to be the progesterone and the DHEA that people struggle with.
Anything you wanted to say about DHEA in particular, Justine?
Just that it's a wonderful master hormone. And so sometimes we do like to include it as part of the program. But again, it really depends on what's going on with that person, and if it really seems that DHEA is appropriate, especially given their test results, right? And so we certainly don't want to use DHEA as part of our strategy if DHEA itself is not low, right? Even if DHEA has the potential to boost other hormones, we don't want the body to have too much DHEA, because every hormone, it's really important. There's sort of this symphony that goes on between all of the hormones in the body, and every hormone has to have a certain ratio with other hormones, right? So there's this ratio between estrogen and progesterone, and there's another very important ratio between DHEA and cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And they have to be in balance in order for the body to do the things it's supposed to be doing, in order for the reproductive system to work, in order for the body to be building up and breaking down at the same rate. All of those things have to be in balance. And so it's really important that we pay attention to exactly what an individual person's hormones are doing before we recommend any supplementation.
Yeah. And so a standard recommendation for diminished ovarian reserve, low AMH, or even premature ovarian insufficiency is to supplement with DHEA. And so we always will test first. So looking at the Dutch test, because sometimes you see people that have low AMH, but their DHEA is actually quite fine, the master hormone, and then you're supplementing with it and it could put it off the charts. So we use as we say, we're always testing, test, don't guess. And so talking about why is it, you talked about this a little bit, but why taking estrogen and progesterone together is important to then avoid estrogen dominance. Can you talk about that one?
Yeah. So again, it really depends on the individual and what their hormones are doing. And we see sort of every permutation you can guess of, so we see situations where estrogen and progesterone are both low. We see situations where estrogen is high and progesterone is low. We see situations even where estrogen, this is much less common, but where estrogen is low and progesterone is high. And we see situations when they're both high. The strategy for helping someone feel better and restore fertility is really different depending on the person. But ultimately, there's this ratio between progesterone and estrogen that's really important. It's roughly 30-1 or so, progesterone to estrogen. And it's really important for that ratio to exist in order for the reproductive system to be doing what it's doing. And, we certainly see situations a lot. We see it clinically, day in and day out, where if someone has high estrogen and low progesterone, then they have what we call estrogen dominance. And this can happen. It's sort of a funny name. Estrogen dominance can happen even if estrogen is low, but the estrogen dominance refers to the fact that it's dominant over progesterone, when that's not supposed to happen. Progesterone is supposed to be the dominant of the two sort of quote unquote female hormones. And so it really matters exactly what's going on with a person, what it is we would recommend. And in some cases, we might recommend both hormones. In other cases, we recommend progesterone only, because it's really important that that balance get restored. Otherwise, we end up with symptoms of estrogen dominance, which, typically end up being things like endometriosis or fibroids or fibrocystic breasts or breast tenderness, or essentially any sort of PMS complaints that people typically end up having very often are related to estrogen dominance.
Mm-hmm. And so we've touched on this next question, but just to reiterate the fact that of when to use bioidentical hormones. So it's very individual. We would never just do it by itself. The lifestyle interventions of working on diet, looking at your mental, emotional stress, digging into sleep, addressing those gut infections, gut bugs, making sure you're moving, balancing blood sugar, like all of this is really key. And then that will let's talk about how that then, if you're doing all of that, then that actually helps the bioidentical become more effective. Like what are you seeing there?
Ultimately, what's going to restore fertility is all of the things you just talked about, right? So getting the good sleep and getting the good exercise and taking care of your body from a nutritional standpoint, right? Because the body produces, like I said earlier, it's the body is meant to function optimally as long as it's got the right resources and we take the stress off of it. And your body will produce its own hormones. But in order to do that, it needs plenty of cholesterol and it needs plenty of B vitamins. Those are sort of the primary ingredients for producing hormones. And in order to have those things, right, we have to have a nutrient-dense diet and we have to have good digestion, right? So even if we eat lots of really great foods, if our digestion is poor, then we don't absorb enough of them and we still can struggle to make hormones. And so the way that we see hormones in functional nutrition is that there's sort of this they're sort of relief care. They help reduce any symptoms that you might have with hormone imbalance. And they sort of press the fast forward button on healing, really. It's a way to sort of warp speed ahead on progress right alongside sort of making all of the other commitments to your health, the diet and the sleep and the exercise. And so we would never do hormones on their own, right? Because that's not the solution. the root cause of whatever is causing the reproductive challenges is not hormone deficiency, right? Hormone deficiency is really a symptom of the problem rather than the actual problem, right? So the symptom, the actual problem is sort of further upstream, right? It's that we've got too much stress on the body, or that we don't have enough nutrient dense resources going into the body. So it's all about minimizing the bad things and maximizing the good things. That has to be where our focus is. And the bioidenticals really help. They really, like I said, fast forward a program, but they have to happen in conjunction with the diet and the lifestyle factors. Otherwise, they're really just a Band-Aid, and they're really just, it really sort of gets us into the realm of more of a Western approach, right? Where there's a problem and then there's a medication for the problem. And ultimately that's not solving the problem. It maybe helps a little bit. It helps bring some relief sometimes for folks, but it rarely actually solves the problem, when the problem in reality is the overall stress on the body.
Right. That pill for the ill approach, which is the Band-Aid approach. So definitely check out, we've done an episode talking about hair tissue mineral analysis. That's one of the tests that we do we see a lot of people that are eating that organic, nutrient dense diet, but your body's not absorbing those crucial minerals. And then also number of podcast episodes on stool testing to check out. We, at this stage of recording, we like the GI map stool test. And I could say the majority of people that we work with, when we do the stool test, we find things going on in the gut, be it bacterial infection, a fungal infection, yeast infection, H. pylori being passed back and forth to both couples because it's highly infectious, and also worms as well. So those are not fun things. But once you got that stress in the body, if there's a gut infection, your body wants to survive, not procreate. So looking at all of this, and those are some of the things that may be impacting your hormones, that looking at those stressors, like we've talked about, just to beat a dead horse, but I don't think it is beating a dead horse. I think a lot of people are not aware that like I certainly wasn't. I was on HRT for like 10 years because with POI, given that diagnosis at 28, was on birth control before that. And then, took HRT for years and years. And yeah, I took the creams and the suppositories and all of that. It was just not addressing the root cause for me. And then I started working on all these foundational side of things. Still a work in progress, but you know better, you do better. Yeah. And so what are some of the mistakes that we talked about some of these, but mistakes we regularly see with bioidenticals? Anything that's coming up there for you?
Yeah. So not testing properly for the most part, right? And so not making it bio-individual, right? And so like you said earlier, we have clients that come to us often that are already on DHEA, and DHEA was prescribed to them just because, right? Because of their diagnosis, but without actually testing and making sure that DHEA was actually low in the system. That's really the most important thing, is that we only recommend bioidentical hormones when they're actually warranted for that person. There's no such thing as a blanket recommendation for a specific diagnosis. And in fact, the diagnosis ultimately is not really critical to what we do, right? So it's part of the story, absolutely. But we don't treat any kind of diagnosis. We don't treat anything. We essentially, we take the stress off of the body and we try to nourish the body with the things it does need. It's so very specific to the person. I find myself repeating today, but it just is so important that we test in advance. We recommend hormones only when they're warranted, and then we can continue to test to make sure that they're still warranted and that someone isn't taking a hormone when they shouldn't actually be taking the hormone anymore.
And so how often do you recommend the testing? So testing before to see kind of that baseline where you are, and we're looking at the Dutch test. And then how long, you talk a little about that, and then how long after would you test?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. We do the Dutch test first as the baseline. And then after hormones are started, I recommend testing every 10 to 12 weeks or so. It can be stretched a little bit if we see that that responsiveness is going really slow. But in general, we want to sort of be testing smartly, right? So we don't want to let it go for a long time. And I certainly have seen this before with clients. Life changes, right? And so sometimes someone sort of steps away from a program to come back a year later and to say, oh, well, I'm still taking everything you recommended. And ultimately, that's not the ideal scenario, right? We want to make sure that we continue to test. test. And this is true not only with hormones, right, but with anything else that we recommend. So, if we find that there are mineral deficiencies, it's the same way, right? If we recommend minerals, we want to make sure that we test a few months down the road to make sure that you actually still need that mineral, because minerals are very much like hormones, and they need to be in balance with one another. Each mineral has a relationship with every other mineral. And so everything we do is very bioindividual, and it's based on that individual, not only that person, but that person right now, right? And so as you change your diet, as you change your lifestyle habits, your body chemistry changes dramatically, really, really dramatically, in a really wonderful way. But ultimately what that means is that your needs for supplements drop down in a couple of months, right? Your biochemistry is so different that you just don't need the same things as you did a few months earlier. And that's why it's important to test.
So we have just like we have access to testing that we ship worldwide, and we will, as part of the Fab Fertile program, we have access to food sensitivity testing, hormone testing using urine, stool testing, looking at the DNA of your stool, and the hair tissue mineral analysis testing. So we also have access to these bioidenticals. So let's talk about our access in the US. What does that look like?
Yeah, so there are a couple of companies that produce some really high quality bioidentical hormones in the United States. And we do have access to those to recommend to clients in the States. And those are pretty easy to come by. They're sold over the counter, or roughly over the counter, right? They have to be recommended by a practitioner, but they don't require a doctor's prescription. And so that's something that we are able to recommend for our clients in the States without any issue. That it's essentially just gets shipped from the same company that ships most all other supplements.
And then for Canadians, we're looking at compounding pharmacies there. What's your recommendation for that one?
Yeah, so typically it means connecting with someone in the functional world in Canada, right? So finding a naturopath or someone along those lines who's interested and a bit familiar with bioidenticals and sort of knows the difference between which options are bioidentical and which options are not.
And then in Europe, similar?
Yeah, well, in Europe, actually, it's more close to the United States. There is at least one brand that I know that we have available to us that we can recommend for clients in the UK through the supplement, the wholesaler essentially that we work with.
Okay, great. Yeah. And so if it is difficult for us to access that, then sometimes it's to see the compounding pharmacy. And if you don't know a practitioner there, you can actually call the compounding pharmacy and see who is recommending bioidenticals as far as practitioners, if they'll give you a list of practitioners that are doing that, and then contact that practitioner, sort of like a reverse engineering that. But typically, most places we're able to provide access and help you navigate that bioidenticals. And let's just talk about, Dr. Anna Cabecca, which is, her episode is coming on the podcast shortly. She has a cream actually that is Jolva, and it has DHEA in it. And as they say, it's meant to be applied to the vulva. So I've used this cream. And I have to say, if you're having any kind of like painful sex or dryness or any symptoms like that, the Jolva is really good. And I would highly recommend it. Anything you wanted to say there about the cream that she has?
Yeah. So I've tried it also. And, I'm one of those people that, I'm my own guinea pig, yeah, right? I've tried like every supplement. I've tried hundreds and hundreds of supplements.
Okay, I haven't tried that many.
I probably have. It's probably been hundreds of supplements over the years, and I rarely feel anything specifically, right? It's very rare that I take something and I go, oh, I can actually feel like a dramatic change, right? So more things are much more subtle, and they happen sort of long-term over time. But I can tell you with Dr. Anna Cabecca's cream, that I actually noticed a difference within 2 or 3 days, that it really was very noticeable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I highly recommend it. I was skeptical. I'll be honest. I was skeptical, but I thought it was worth a try because she was offering, just to pay shipping and handling for a sample. Yes. I thought, I might as well give it a try. That's worth it.
Yeah, I bought the whole thing, and so it's really good. And yeah, you kind of, as you say, you notice immediate results. And she's got like 1,000 testimonials on there of how how helpful that is. So definitely, if that is something that you wanted to explore, you can check out her site, Dr. Anna Cabeca.
Yeah, and Fab Fertile approved, right? It's got good ingredients, right?
Absolutely.
There are poor supplements out there that contain lots of sort of junky ingredients. And Dr. Anna Cabeca, she's a smart lady and she knows what she's doing, and she's really got the right ingredients in there. So there's nothing in there that's toxic or that has any potential, as far as we know, to have any side effects, right? Everything is nice, clean ingredients.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Maca, because that's something that kind of people sometimes are supplementing with. And what's your take on Maca?
So Maca is really more of a nutritive support, right? Mm-hmm. So it sort of nourishes the organs so that they can do what they're supposed to do on their own. And so we tend to see that it helps increase progesterone, which low progesterone tends to be the most common thing that we see as far as the master hormones go. And so Maca is really supportive, and it's been used for thousands of years, right? And so we sort of can't go wrong. Like we don't need a clinical study to tell us that it has an effect, right? Because it's something that's been used for a long, long time. And it's pretty rare that Maca doesn't agree with someone. So it's a food-based supplement. It is a food. It's a root. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it's really hard to go wrong with Maca.
Yeah, I've tried different powders of it over the years, which are kind of like this malty kind of taste. I couldn't say that it's, fabulous tasting. And so I like Feminescence, and that's a Peruvian Maca. And they also have a Maca Harmony reproductive health. So that's can support preconception health and optimize fertility, help regulate cycles. What's your take on that one?
You know what? I actually am not familiar with that product, but it really sounds fantastic. And like I said earlier, you can't go wrong with Maca in general.
Yeah, so definitely consider a Maca. But again, you want to get testing first to see, like, before you go off and take something. It's always our caveat here. Anything else you wanted to say with bioidenticals?
I guess just that it's, again, reiterating that it's very specific to the person. And if what you're looking for is hormone therapy to fix all your problems, that's not what we do. Mm-hmm. It's always got to be combined with healthy diet and lifestyle in order to make sure that it has the ability to really help the body do what it's supposed to be doing, rather than sort of strong arming the body into a particular thing. Because when the body lowers hormones, it's doing that on purpose. When there's stress on the body, it prioritizes the things it has to prioritize in order to keep you safe. Unfortunately, the reproductive system is one of the systems that sort of takes a back seat when that happens, but that's the body sort of adapting to its environment. And so we really don't want to strong arm the system with synthetic hormones. We really want, or with bioidentical hormones for that mm-hmm. matter, we really want them to be an aid, to be a complement to everything else that's happening, that's transforming the body, that's causing it to function optimally, and for the reproductive system to work the way that it's supposed to naturally.
Yeah, and you can see when you start making these foundational changes, diet, stress, infections, toxins, addressing all of those, you can start seeing changes in a short period of time. You have to bear in mind that, whatever has been happening, it's been happening in your body for a number of years, depending on how old you are. And obviously the conventional side of things is let's pill for an ill, let's give you some medication, and it doesn't address the underlying cause. So definitely it's looking at root cause and seeing, well, why is it happening in the first place? Which then looking at healthy mom and dad, healthy pregnancy, healthy postpartum, healthy children. So it is, it's like two steps back to go like one giant leap forward. But it does take commitment and a willingness to look at this way of healing your body. And really, once you discover the functional approach, I really feel like you can't turn back, because once you know this stuff, you're like, what the heck? Why have I been hiding my head in the sand my whole life? I didn't know any of this. And now once you discover it, it's like, oh, wow. And you can you just really, like Justine is talking about bioindividuality, you really understand your body, and what works for someone else is not necessarily going to work for you. So it is taking that, using testing and digging deeper and saying, why right now? Like for you and I, and for Justine, it's infertility. Other people, it's cancer, diabetes, all sorts of other issues. But people listening to the podcast right now, it's something's going on with our fertility, and to look at the root cause.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on, Justine.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
So if you're ready to make a decision and you really want to get pregnant in 2020, now is the time to talk with me. I offer a free call, and this call is for action takers. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who want to get pregnant and have their baby. And I have very limited availability. September is full, and we're currently booking into October right now. So if you're seriously considering working with us, be sure to book your call, and you can go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, click on book a free call, or you can go to the show notes and click on book a free call. And this call is for you and your partner. Definitely make sure that your partner is included on this call. And also, if you are a single person, we do coach singles, but we exclusively coach couples. Make sure that your partner is on the call. And thanks again for being here. And thanks so much for listening. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GETPREGNANT podcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. Hey there, I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers, really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FABFertile.com, and click on book a free call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FABFertile.com, and click on book a free call. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you are a U.S. resident, text FERTILE, F-E-R-T-I-L-E to 55444. You'll be prompted to enter your email address and you'll receive our Fertility Yoga download. In this 20-minute intro video, we focus on a calming and peaceful practice to connect back to our heart. These simple yoga poses can help quiet negative thoughts and make you feel more in control. Download it now and get started today. For U.S. residents, text FERTILE, F-E-R-T-I-L-E to 55444. For non-U.S. residents, go to Yoga Freebie, F-R-E-E-B-I-E, to access your special gift. That's yogafreebie.com to access the free Fertility Yoga download. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified health care provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.